there's magic coming. Oh, there's magic coming. Oh, there's magic coming. Where you gonna be tonight? Oh, there's magic coming. There's magic coming. There's magic coming. Get ready for the rest of your life. Hello and welcome to Sassafras Cast, a podcast full of witchy insights to help you lead your sassiest life. I am Rorie Kelly, a tarot reader, singer-songwriter, and all-around personal growth nerd from Long Island, New York. And if you are tuned in for the video version of this podcast, I wish I could say I was drinking a delicious witchy tea, but right now I am just flooding my body with the caffeine it direly needs, because I record these at 10:30 on Sunday mornings, and that's an early time for this musician's soul. I hope you're feeling excellent today. Let's check in. Let's take a moment to ask ourselves how we're feeling today, both in our bodies and in our minds and in our hearts. That's not a both, that's a truth. It's three things. Let's check in with ourselves. Let's breathe a little bit. And see how you're feeling today. And I don't want to ask this with judgment. I don't want you to try to edit the remark. I just want you to be there for yourself in the moment and how you're feeling right now, and allow yourself to feel that way and honor it and acknowledge, yes, this is how I'm feeling. I find that sometimes I'm in resistance to how I feel because I don't like it, or it's inconvenient, or I really should be feeling some other emotion that's more in tune with productivity, or how I'm supposed to show up with the day today in my head. And I find that a lot of suffering is eased by just telling myself, yep, I'm allowed to feel that. In just a moment, we will begin the Witchy Weather Report, but first a shout out to my patrons. If you did not know this, you can support this podcast at patreon.com/Sassafras Tarot for $1 a month or more. I record these episodes live, and my patrons get a private YouTube link before each one so that they can tune in for the live recording. I believe I just had a new patron this month, so I'm going to open up my Patreon so I can make sure I give everyone credit. My patrons get to hang out in the private YouTube chat with me during each episode, comment, ask questions, get their own ideas into the chat. We've had a couple of really special ideas and perspectives that have been in episodes only because of patrons, because they've shown up and shared some really great ideas. So I'm really grateful for that interaction. We also have a private Discord server where we talk about all things witchy and wonderful, and patrons also get a shout out in each episode. Here we go. Thank you to Russ Green, Amanda Little, Patty Bell from soulshepherd.love, Melissa Marie, Rachel Miller, Anti-Fragile Tarot, Grayson, Savannah Tillett, B from Whimsical Solace, Millie Orozco, Ruby Marchetti, Brittany, Hannah Westlock, and my newest patron, Lisa Diana from Ginger Dawn Studios. I'm so grateful to have you in my universe. You're wonderful. Thank you for being a part of my world. All right, let's get started with the Witchy Weather Report. I'm reading today from the Crystal Visions Tarot. So, spoiler alert, my topic today, which I guess you already knew if you have seen the subject line of this podcast, wherever you're viewing or listening, my topic is about befriending your body. And as always, when I talk about self-kindness, I like to talk about it in those terms. I think that loving yourself and loving your body are two things that have been in some ways sold to us and co-opted by capitalism. And that doesn't mean they're not worthy pursuits. But it does mean that for those of us who struggle with this, it's not helpful language. Love yourself, especially hearing things like, how can anyone else love you if you don't love yourself first? I find that to be cruel language. I find that to be language that says you don't deserve to be loved unless you know how to do it for yourself, which is, wow, is that harmful if someone is struggling with self-esteem? And I also can tell you from personal experience that it's not true. I have loved very deeply while not being able to have that healthy relationship with myself. Was every relationship perfect at that time? No, because I didn't love myself. Were there still relationships that were incredibly rewarding and fulfilling and healthy for me? Yep. And love was involved, even though I didn't have this healthy relationship with myself at the time. So I'm just here to dispel that myth. Yep, you can experience real love with others if you don't love yourself yet. Yes, you can. However, I am also here to say, yeah, it's worth learning to show up and be kind to yourself and be friend to yourself. And just as we wouldn't expect to fall in love with somebody on a first date or having just whatever, had them slide into your DMs on a social media site, we wouldn't expect to fall in love with someone. And if someone expected that of us right away, the instant we met them, that would be a red flag. It would be creepy. Similarly, we don't need to push ourselves to go from having a difficult relationship with our body and with ourselves to, yes, I love everything about myself. That's unrealistic. That is performative at best. Instead, I encourage us to befriend ourselves. I encourage us to learn about ourselves and show up for ourselves the way we might a new friend that we were interested in but didn't know very well, but we're ready to have like wholesome and healthy feelings towards, right? Let's develop our relationship with ourselves. That, I believe, is the real way to do it. So anyway, I'm going to do the witchy weather report for you. This is where I pull a tarot card or just reflect on the synchronicity of the moment and kind of give everyone listening a piece of guidance for this moment. I'm reading today with the Crystal Visions Tarot. I thought about this as I was picking a deck today, and I wanted to pick a deck that felt like a kind, loving deck, like a warm embrace. And I really feel that way about the Crystal Visions Tarot. The color palette is warm. The color palette is different a little bit suit to suit. That's one of the ways that the suits are differentiated, which I think is very clever. But overall, the color palette is pinks and purples and blues and these colors that feel to me deeply soothing and like a place of healing. My intention as I pull this card is that wherever and whenever you are, if you're listening to this, that it be something meaningful for you in the moment. That even if it's years later after I record this and you're listening to this, first of all, thank you if that's the case. I'm really honored that you're choosing to listen to my past episodes. Even if that's the case, that this still be meaningful for you where it finds you right now. And I will share at this moment that I'm recording this, it is August of 2022. It's been a wild year for me personally, and I have shared freely about that on the podcast and even more so with my patrons about how I've had kind of a bad luck year and it's challenged me in a lot of ways. And I've learned recently that I'm not the only one who feels that way. And I have seen that people in this moment are starting to get some unexpected things that allow them to exercise some of the hard-won lessons this year. We've won some very hard-won lessons. We have learned things the hard way, right? Like school of hard knocks, as they say. Has forced us, I think, to learn some lessons, to get better at themselves. Certainly for me, this topic of loving your body and showing up for your relationship with your body has been a school of hard knocks lesson for me this year. I've had some health struggles. And I see that we are starting to get an opportunity to take those lessons and apply them to our lives in a healthy way that feels good rather than in panic mode. So if you have been living in panic mode, if you feel like you've been living crisis to crisis, I'm here to tell you that if you continue to show up for yourself, I believe for all of us that there is some good around the corner and that our earnest efforts to do right by ourselves and others are going to pay dividends very soon. Let me pull this card. Oh, I can already see it might be reversed because I have just accidentally introduced reversals into my deck. Here's our card. It is not reversed. It is the Five of Swords. I want to talk to you about hurt feelings, and I want to talk to you about wounds that appear shallow that we tell ourselves we shouldn't be feeling. I talked earlier about checking in with ourselves and simply giving ourselves permission to feel what we feel. I want to make sure the camera's seeing that card well. This is the Five of Swords. We see, if you're listening, by the way, there's always a video version of this available on YouTube. If you search Sassafras Cast on YouTube or Sassafras Tarot, I can't remember which it's under, one of those things. Here we have this young woman with two swords sticking out of her back. There is a figure with kind of dark wings walking away from her with 3 swords over their shoulder. There are dark birds on the horizon, including one perching on one of the swords in her back, which feels a little friggin' mean. Gosh, bird, like, be nice. This sword is embedded in her back. Gosh. There's a real sense of having been hurt. The swords are not embedded in their deep. She's walking around. So this is not about a death wound as like the 10 of Swords. It's the ultimate betrayal. The 5 of Swords is more like perhaps the red flag, right? The betrayal that lets you know, wow, you should believe people when they tell you and show you who they are, you know? The 5 of Swords is about feeling like your trust has been let down, and the hurt feelings that come from investing in someone who we then learn isn't invested in you in the same way. Doesn't see you as someone to have a healthy and wholesome relationship with, but sees you as someone perhaps to take advantage of, perhaps even someone that they feel comfortable ridiculing. It's very, very harmful when we open our hearts and are met with ridicule rather than kindness. That's trauma right there, right? So I want to share with you that 5 of Swords, although it is a smaller card, it's a trauma card. And if you're going through a small betrayal like that, a small hurt, and this doesn't have to be interpersonal. I think about this when a woman posts a picture on the internet and it has nothing to do with like, the topic of her post is not about like, judge my body, right? The topic of her post is just about like, hey, here's what's been going on for me. I'm excited that I started a new business, or here's this, new thing that I've started that I want to share with you about. And then people on the internet get on and start making crappy comments about her body and her appearance. That's betrayal, right? Where a woman on the internet can't even earnestly share about something that's important to her without her body and her face being subject to betrayal. As you can tell, I have a lot of opinions about this topic. We're going to go deep with this episode. But what I want to share with you is that betrayal doesn't have to be like even from a deep interpersonal relationship. It can be from a stranger choosing to take your earnest output, your earnest, like putting yourself out there and being honest and stepping out, right? Showing the world what you do, and choosing instead to focus on whatever negative thing they can find about you, the trolls of the world. And that's deeply hurtful. And I think we've all been given the advice. I certainly got this advice a lot as a child to don't let them know it bothers you and let it roll off your back. And what I really have found is that I now have some trauma around allowing myself to be honest when something hurts me, and feeling like it's my fault if someone is crappy to me and it affects me and I have to pretend to be okay. And I want to let you know, you don't have to pretend to be okay. You're allowed to be hurt. You're allowed to process those feelings, and you're allowed to sit in those feelings and let them inform you how you can show up for yourself better, because we can't control it when people are trolls. We can't control it when people, whether personal people in our lives are trolls or whether it's people we've never met before on the internet are trolls. Their behavior is not in our control. However, what we choose to accept in our lives is in our control, and how we choose to respond to it is in our control. And it's okay to respond honestly, and it's okay to call it out publicly, and it's okay to stand up for ourselves and say that was hurtful and you had no reason to say that. And it's okay to ask ourselves, what can I do to protect my tender heart in the future? Because my tender heart is worth protecting. So that's what I want to ask you in these coming weeks. What can you do to protect your tender heart? Because your tender heart is worth protecting. Let's jump into our topic of the day. I'm going to go right ahead and share, and if you've been listening for any length of time, this will not surprise you. I'm a feminist. I'm really grateful that my mother raised me a feminist and raised me to value myself. And not just to value myself, but to question the kind of patriarchal norms that have driven the society for so long and have been ultimately really harmful to women and made women take a back seat in so many ways in life. My mom was a second wave feminist. I'm really grateful for that. And as someone who I'm an intersectional feminist. I don't know if like I fall into the third wave definition or not generationally, but as someone who has continued to have this deep commitment to social justice, not just for women, but for people of color and other marginalized communities, I think it's very important that we show up honestly and look at the ways that society and culture and kind of the way things have always been done shape our own very personal psychology. I think it's important that we look at the ways that the media tells us our body is not okay unless it is small enough, white enough, like fits conventional beauty standards, doesn't look too queer, looks kind of heteronormative. There's a lot of kind of like subliminal no messages that we get. And some of us certainly have the personality to be like, yeah, well, you know what? Screw you, because this is who I am and I'm going to own it, and I'm going to own it loud. And I think many of us also nurse deep wounds around that, because the truth is there is no perfect person. There is no person who is the perfect societal beauty standard, right? Who is the quote unquote correct weight, who is the quote unquote correct skin color, who has, like the body type that is 100% correct. We all have things that our culture have told us are flaws, just in the way we friggin' exist physically. Without even hearing one word out of your mouth, already our culture is judging us. Already it's telling us you're not good enough and you better have something damn good to say to make up for that, because you're already starting at less than 0 with your flawed, imperfect body. And by the way, here are 10 things that you can buy to improve that. Like I said, I have a lot of feelings about this, both personally and politically. I'm someone who, like I said, was grateful to be raised feminist, and was grateful to be raised by a woman who taught me to question those cultural norms, those values of make yourself pretty for the patriarchy, and you're not presentable unless you change your appearance with makeup and by dressing a certain way. And, it's not professional or okay to just have your human body be the way it is. I was taught to question those things, and I'm very grateful that I was. And I was also raised by a woman who really hated her body. And I'm also surrounded by women who really hate and struggle with their bodies. And it's a source of great pain to me when I see people I love deeply say horrible things about themselves and use words that have been weaponized against themselves as a bigger weapon than they ever could be. One of those words is fat. And I want to just say that this is a podcast that supports health at every size, and I'm not here to support any type of fat phobia. And I have seen so many women, by the way, of a variety of body types and weights, use the word fat on themselves in a deeply vicious way. And I've started to see some people reclaim the word fat and say, yes, I'm fat. Like, that's a descriptor and it's not a negative term. And I think that's beautiful, in the same way that the queer community has reclaimed the word queer, for example, to say like, yep, here I am, and you can't use this to hurt me anymore because I'm going ahead and allowing it to be a word I feel comfortable with. So you've lost your power. You've lost your power to hurt me with those words. At the same time, I've seen so many of my friends, mostly but not all women, leverage these same insults that society puts on us against themselves in a really mean way, in a way that you wouldn't talk to your worst enemy. Women who are so kind-hearted, who are so wholesome, who would show up at your door with like a bowl of soup and, like a box of Kleenex if you had a cold, who would just show up to help you and be earnest and not be judgmental, use these words as vicious insults against themselves. Because they've been taught that it's not only okay, but correct to hate their bodies as it is, unless their body can meet some, implausible standard. And it's really hurtful. And I find myself talking in the third person, right? I find myself talking about how I see this in people I deeply care about. And of course I see it in myself, of course I also see it in myself, but there's something in our brains, and I think it's deeply embedded in our culture, that says it's okay to hurt myself about this, but it's not okay to say it to other people. Now, some people do both. I saw a really fascinating Instagram story the other day from an account I follow. I'll try to put a link to them in the show notes. I believe that their handle is Find Food Freedom. They are a intuitive eating account. And she said, I want to ask you those negative things that you say to yourself. Would you say them to someone else? I want you to examine the thoughts in your head, and I want you to do this non-judgmentally. We're not doing this to beat ourselves up, but to ask yourself, are you the person who looks in the mirror and says bad things in yourself, and then also goes out to the mall, to the beach or whatever, and is judging the bodies of others, is saying things like, wow, I wouldn't wear that if I were her, those kind of things. And her point was that it was an opportunity to ask ourselves if what we were feeling was poor body image, body dysmorphia, or if there was also an element of fat phobia that had been internalized. And her message was also, and this is really important, as we work to undo the damage that our cultural programming has done, that we be gentle with ourselves and say, you know what, it's probable and likely, it's probable and likely that we have internalized some fat phobia, some homophobia, some racism, some white supremacy, right? We look at, wow, colorism, in the media, and it blows my mind. It's likely that some of that has been internalized into our psychology because people who are very, very good at their jobs have actively put those messages there, have actively marketed to us in such a way that it gives us this good, bad spectrum of physical attributes that should never be judged in that way. And so let's be gentle with ourselves and let's acknowledge that, let's expect to find it there. Let's look deeply within ourselves and say, I expect to find some problematic stuff here, so that when we find it, instead of freaking out, we can say, all right, now it's time to undo it. Now it's time to look at that and make a new choice, both with how I relate to myself and how I relate to the world around me. Anyway, this has been a little bit of a political rant about what I think is the cause of our deep disconnect with our body. I don't think it's the only cause. It's a cause that means a lot to me through the lens of a woman in the 21st century, watching these effects play out amongst myself and my friends and my loved ones. I think another cause is, here we go, capitalism. I think not just capitalism, but like kind of a workaholic culture, which maybe has its roots in Puritanism, where the idea is you don't rest. You just work hard, and idle hands are the devil's plaything, and you need to always be active and proactive and doing something, unless it's Sunday and that day's for the Lord. So that's just a day to sit and reflect on God and feel guilty about any work you didn't do over the week. And I have to say that I think that work at any expense and kind of shunning of leisure is a piece of it too. I think it's really interesting looking at the way exercise culture has become so separate from play. Even though when we're little kids, we run around and play, like we naturally exercise. You know what I mean? We naturally have energy. Even I was a bookworm, right? I was a little kid who would rather have their head buried in a book, but I still enjoyed running around like a maniac. I still enjoyed turning random cartwheels. Look what I can do with my body. This beautiful exploratory feeling that little kids have around their bodies and how their bodies can interact with the world around them and what their bodies are capable of. And I think it's interesting that we have in so many ways separated that from exercise culture. Now, exercise is something you do at an appointed time in an appointed place. You join a gym, even if you live in the kind of place where you can go run around outside like a maniac. It's like, no, what I do is I go to the gym, And then when you go to the gym, you have a set number of things you do and very specific actions. And I'm not here to hate on going to the gym. I am currently not a member of a gym because I ended my membership during quarantine in 2020 and haven't re-upped it. But I absolutely have found going to the gym to be a really healthy time for me, a time to just be absorbed in doing something meaningful for myself. I also know that there are people who go to the gym and it becomes an unhealthy fixation, right? People binge on exercise the same way that they're afraid of binging on food. And this is a safe place to put that hyper focus. And it's, even if it's physically healthy for them, which in some cases it is, it's not emotionally healthy because it ties their self-worth to their ability to punish their body. So again, I'm not here to hate on exercise. I love exercise. I think it's interesting that we focus on exercise at the expense of joyful movement, when I'm curious to know if joyful movement might have more better impacts on your health, more better scientific measuring term, than regimented exercise that we slog through. Like, yeah, it's always good to get your heart rate up, but I bet that it's even better to get your heart rate up doing something that you feel joyful about. In the same way, it's good to relax and spend time like replenishing your body, and it's even better if you've got like a kid or a pet that you love that like triggers those endorphins. I just think it's interesting to think about how much of our health goals could be more effective if we had a rule for ourselves, a boundary, that we were only going to do it with joy in our hearts and with kindness in our hearts to our body, that we were not going to be motivated from a place of self-punishment and like whipping yourself into shape as though what you need to be okay is literally to be whipped until you are perfect. Oh my God. I want to say I had some notes on this episode that I made last night, and I had some organized thoughts, and instead it's been a full-on rant for the last 20 minutes. So, welcome to Sassafras Cast. I want to share this comment from Hannah, one of my patrons who's in the chat. I tell my kids anything they see online that makes them feel like they should look any different than they do is usually something trying to sell something. I love that. Yeah, absolutely true. And I love going even deeper with that, because I think that even when it's not a direct sales pitch, right? Even when it's not a direct, like, use this skin whitening cream, use this thing to help you lose weight, even when it's not a clear product pitch, there's still sales involved. There are brands trying to sell you on how wholesome they are by featuring conventionally attractive, young, skinny women using their product and smiling, right? And it's interesting to see that inherently there's exclusivity there, right? The brand is implying, look, here are these people who are the societal idea enjoying our brand. You can be the societal ideal too if you enjoy our brand. But there's also an exclusivity there. There's also like, oh, your skin is a different tone than the people we overwhelmingly feature on our ads. Your body is a different shape and size. You've got a problem there. And that is, it's negging, right? We learned about this. We learned about this from like pickup artist techniques, and how like men will deliberately, if they're in this like pickup artist culture, deliberately give women backhanded compliments so that the woman both feels like the person appreciates her and also like she's lucky to be appreciated because she's actually so yucky, right? Like those backhanded kind of compliments that make a woman feel subtly like her self-esteem is being undermined, even as on the surface there's nothing you can really argue with. And I feel like brands and capitalism and advertising culture does that a lot. And I mean, I'm someone who, we all have to engage with capitalism, right? Right now, we don't get a choice to opt out. We all have to pay for things with money. So we all have to engage at least with our like financial system and with commerce. I have someone I follow that I really admire, Sarah M. Chappell from the Holistic Business Academy, always wants to say, commerce is not capitalism. It's not the same thing. In other words, you can engage ethically with these things if you choose to. And I think it's important to make those choices rather than throw the baby out with the bathwater. We don't get a choice but to try to find ways to pay our bills. And we shouldn't shy away from doing those in entrepreneurial ways, from using marketing to help us move our businesses and our lives forward, because that's just the world right now. But I do think that there is a way to do that that is woke, that is aware of cultural norms and works to be inclusive rather than exclusive, and works to affirm rather than to neg the people that you are trying to reach. That's something that's deeply important to me as I try to widen my reach with Sassafras Cast and with kind of like my music as a brand, like Rorie Kelly as a musician. I am not ever in my life willing to do the kind of marketing that makes you feel bad about yourself. My marketing is always going to be about affirmation. It's always going to be like, there is room for all of us at this table and we are creating a safe space. And I am not interested in the everyone who does this is cooler than you marketing. We're all cool. You know what I mean? And for me, that's a way that I have found to evaluate myself and ask myself, how can I use these tools in a way that is in line with my deepest morals? We're way off topic. let me talk about the topic of this podcast. The name of this podcast is Befriend Your Body, by gosh. I want you to do this. I want you to think about befriending your body, about your body not as an enemy, not as something you're just supposed to love unconditionally, because I'm sorry, it's unrealistic in our current society. If there is someone listening right now who does love their body unconditionally and they're listening to this like, what? What? There are people who don't feel comfortable in their beautiful, amazing bodies from birth? Well, I don't know if you're either repressing or if you're just like incredibly lucky to have managed to escape those messages and be raised in such an affirming way. But probably you're not listening because the topic of this podcast has been made clear. I want to talk about what befriending your body does and doesn't mean, because there's a lot of falsely empowering messaging around things like exercise culture, around things like associating health with thinness, associating health even with having a certain skin tone. I have absolutely seen that like kind of subliminally reflected in advertising, associating health with a certain body size and shape, associating health and self-care with practices that are designed to do nothing other than to alter your appearance in order to get you to spend money on products that do that, that bring no health gain, but do nothing other than change your physical appearance. I'm talking about things like, what comes immediately to mind is like shaving, plucking your eyebrows, body alteration that doesn't actually bring a health gain. Now, I'm not telling you that those practices are bad or evil. I am telling you that the people who are marketing those practices for you as a must-have for a joyful life are doing something deeply messed up to you. I'm telling you that it is wrong, actively wrong, to tell people your body's not good enough for public consumption unless you change it. That's hands down not okay. That doesn't mean we can't find joy in and adorning our body in a loving way, right? In body alteration, that is about us celebrating our unique individual creativity with our body as a medium. That's when it becomes beautiful. It's beautiful when we're like, guess what? My body is my canvas and I use it to express who I am and make my outsides match my insides, and I feel great about that. It's troubled. It reflects a troubled relationship with our body when we feel like, but if I don't put makeup on, I can't go to the grocery store, right? That's a feeling of, wow, my face isn't good enough to be seen as it is. I have to change it. Oh gosh, your face is good enough. Your face is fine. Your face is not scary. I like your face. So what does befriending your body not mean? Befriending your body does not mean pushing through the pain. It does not mean denying yourself the food that you actually want to eat, out of a belief that there are good foods and bad foods and your body's desires are not to be trusted. It does not mean setting harsh external rules around what your body is and is not allowed to want and feel because someone told you it was healthy. It does not mean no pain, no gain. It does not mean fad diets, even if they are cloaked in empowering language and pretend not to be fad diets. It does not mean sacrificing sleep in order to get up early to exercise. You need sleep. It does not mean forcing anyone else's external rules of thumbs on your own unique, wild, individual physical form, rather than just sitting with your body and listening to it. It does not mean ignoring hunger cues. It does not mean ignoring sexual desires or the desire for rest based on a false idea that these desires somehow are immoral. It does not mean going after a particular number on the scale. It does not mean proving yourself by working out until you vomit or pass out. Does anyone else? I had friends in high school who did this. I had friends in high school who were on the track team and would compare notes about how often a practice made them vomit because it pushed their bodies that hard. That's not befriending your body. Wow, that's terrorizing your body. It does not mean saying I'm fine when you do not in fact feel fine. Befriending your body does not mean calling yourself broken when your body's desires and sexual responses do not line up with the heteronormative, patriarchal scripts that your brain has been force-fed all your life. It does not mean literally any choice that you intellectually make with your brain because you read or heard that that's the correct way to be healthy without checking in with your own body and your own physical needs. Because befriending your body is about listening earnestly and showing up for it just as it is. You would never announce your friendship to someone by immediately imposing these harsh, restrictive rules with elaborate guilt trips if they are not followed. That's not a friendship. It's an abusive relationship. It's an abusive relationship. What I want to share too, as I'm going through this list of what is not befriending your body that I made last night, I want to share that so many of our visions of health are actually very ableist. And sometimes even our empowering language is ableist, right? When people talk like, love your body, it works so hard for you, love your body, your feet carry you around all day, love your body, look at what your hands can do every day, they can create your life for you. I'm not saying it's not good to have that kind of gratitude, but it's exclusive, right? It says, oh, if you're not an able-bodied person whose feet can carry them around all day, I guess loving your body is optional, right? Let's love our body exactly how it is, and let's not tie our love for our body on quote unquote what it can do for us. Let's just show up for our body lovingly the way we would show up for a kitten we found in the street and pet it and give it some friggin' milk. Or maybe not if you're lactose intolerant. Let's love our body the same way we would love a child that came into our lives and needed care and hadn't gotten the care that it needed. Let's show up for our bodies the unconditional way that we would show up for a child or a pet who simply needed love and basic care. Because I want to be honest with you, I think we have been encouraged to not give love and not give basic care to our bodies. Instead, we've been encouraged to see our bodies as a project to fix. Even in cultures, like in health nut cultures, right? Even in cultural pockets where health is a big topic of discussion and showing up for your body is ostensibly like the name of the game. I find that there's a lot of disempowering language and there's a lot of focus on appearance. There's a lot of focus on look at the progress I've made, like before and after photos. And there's a great deal of focus on doing quote unquote the right things as if it's like a religious scripture to follow, like making your macronutrients be in the correct ratio and you've done something wrong and you quote unquote cheated if you had a milkshake one day or you ate too many carbs last night or whatever. And inherently, that attitude, although it may indeed be founded in healthy principle, like, nutrition and exercise that has been studied, that attitude inherently creates a disconnect between us and our body. It inherently says, I'm not going to listen to my body. I'm going to listen to quote unquote the facts. I'm going to, hey body, guess what? I'm going to care for you based on science. Not entirely a bad thing, but what it also says to your body is, I'm not going to listen to you. I'm going to listen to what I believe to be the right healthy thing to do. If you tell me you need rest and I think that I have to get up at 6 a.m. to go to the gym, even though I didn't get to bed last night until midnight, and that means I'm consistently only getting 6 hours of sleep, I'm going to do the gym thing because the gym is what I keep hearing. The gym is the thing my brain keeps hearing is what I need to be healthy, and I'm not healthy if I don't go to the gym. And we unfortunately don't hear, you're not healthy if you don't get enough sleep. Instead we really get idolized for not getting enough sleep. It's like busyness culture is glorified. So it creates this disconnect and it tells our body, your input is not welcome. I'm in charge. I will decide what to do and I don't care what you think. It creates a disconnect with our body, and then it creates, when we have problems with our body, it almost makes the relationship or non-relationship come to a head. It's like, wow, I've been doing everything right. And then you go out on me, then you, get injured like this, then you develop this condition that I was supposed to be insuring against by maxing out my friggin', superfood nutrients or whatever. Wow, you can't do this one thing of just being a good body when I'm doing all of this for you. You ungrateful body. It becomes clear what a toxic relationship we have. And I know that so much of this is a toxic relationship with ourselves, right? I really find that my own self-esteem, my own sense of worthiness, especially worthiness to be allowed to have feelings, worthiness to be allowed to need a break, worthiness to not always have to be working, worthiness to be able to say the imperfect thing instead of having the right thing to say, worthiness to be able to make a mistake. Those things are areas of anxiety for me and that come out in my relationship with my body. it's deeply related, right? So I want to be kind to us. I don't think we're monsters deliberately harming our bodies or deliberately ignoring our bodies. I think that loving your body, showing up with kindness for your body, is a piece of showing up with kindness for yourself, and indeed can be a gateway to it, right? It can be very hard for us to show up with kindness to ourselves when our culture tells us that our worthiness of love is only measured by externality, is only measured by people's perceptions of us, by whether we measure up to whatever, whatever the bar is in your community, in your peer group, unless we are doing the correct things to keep up with everybody else, that we're not worthy. Unemployed, you're lazy. Having a difficult time feeling good about your body and your outfits, well, you've got issues, man. Maybe you need to be healthier. Feeling depressed, feeling anxious, having any kind of mental illness, well, you need to get that checked out. And there's a school of thought that either is like, well, get on medication so that I don't have to deal with your problem. And there's another school of thought that's like, oh, God, don't put yourself on those chemicals. Instead, just take walks every day. And both of those schools of thought are deeply judgmental. And we know that there are healthy ways to take care of our mental health. There are healthy ways to honor our needs, and none of them include shoving them under the rug and pretending that we don't have those needs. And yet I feel that that's what we're inclined to do with both our body and our mental health and our emotions in this culture. So what does befriending your body mean? Because I've talked about a lot of negative stuff. I'm aware, by the way, that this is supposed to be kind of a witchy podcast, and I'm just going like wholesale into like, let me tell you what's wrong with our culture and and like how body positivity can save your life. But I'm getting to it. What does it mean to befriend our body? I'm trying hard to use that language, befriending your body, not loving your body, because I want you to love your body. But befriending always comes first, right? If you hate your body, if you look in the mirror and want to throw up, well, looking in the mirror the next day and saying an affirmation of like, I love myself, I'm beautiful, while you want to throw up is not going to help. It is just going to teach your mind and your body that you're a liar. So that's not helpful. I'd rather we befriend ourselves. I'd rather we simply open our hearts to our bodies. Befriending your body does mean respecting your limits. It means showing up for your body lovingly when your body tells you this hurts, or I'm too tired to do this, or I feel funny when you do this and it's not a good kind of funny. It means respecting those limits and reconsidering your actions. Respecting your body means listening when your body keeps telling you what you do and don't want to eat. And I mean your body, not your mind. Respecting your body means developing an understanding with your body to separate out, and this is the work of a lifetime, by the way, it doesn't happen overnight, to separate out the feelings of what I'm supposed to want to eat, what I'm not supposed to want to eat, and so it has this tempting allure, and what my body actually wants for itself. And I want to give you a hint if you're like, oh yeah, what my body actually wants is healthy foods for sure, but it's just, like my psychology, it's like, as soon as you immediately say, here's what my body wants, it's a cue to me that you may not be listening, unless you spent a great deal of time listening to your body's desires, because it doesn't always come out right away. But sometimes we do have cravings, and our body can actually teach us what it needs. I had a year of my life where I was craving turmeric and parsley. I was cooking with them all the time. I didn't know why, but I was like, well, it's not hurting me. I'll just eat those things, right? And I later found out it was because I had very low iron, and that both of those, herbs, I guess you would say, are known to aid your body when you don't have enough iron in it. Like, they're not necessarily iron rich, but they're like helping your body like work without the iron that it needs. They're like able to help you make up the difference a little bit. And that was really fascinating. And then my iron got better, and then I just didn't crave those foods as much anymore. I don't think they're gross, but I didn't feel like I wanted to have them in every meal. So I think it's really fascinating. Sometimes your body's desires are really there to help you, to clue you into something important. Befriending your body means allowing your body to set the terms and the limits rather than telling your body what's allowed to want and what it's allowed to feel and when it's allowed to stop. Befriending your body means no pain, no gain is out the window. Befriending your body means pain is a messenger. Just like your painful emotions are messengers telling you when your boundaries have been crossed, it means that when your body is in pain, you listen and you ask yourself why. Befriending your body means choosing to be kind to your body around food. It means choosing to be kind to yourself around food. It means not buying into a culture that tells you you have done something morally wrong if you eat a food that is not on the approved list. Befriending your body means honoring your body's need for rest. Both sleep, getting enough sleep at night, which means 8 hours plus. It doesn't mean kind of try to get 8 hours and never quite get there. It means 8 hours plus. But that's a rule of thumb. Your body knows better what you need than a rule of thumb I'm telling you. It means listening to your body and sleeping when you need to sleep for as long as you need to sleep. It means listening to your body about rest, meaning if you push your body to be active all of the time when your body needs to sometimes be sedentary, you're doing some harm to your body and to your relationship with your body. It also means respecting your body's need for movement. It means listening when your body's like, I feel like running around right now. Even if you're like, yeah, we're in public, this is not okay. It means creating space for your body to have that movement that it actually does desire and being kind to it. It means moving your body, especially like stretching your muscles in such a way that prevents injury from things that you're doing every day that you don't have a choice about. Like certainly under capitalism, most of us have jobs that require some kind of repetitive motion or repetitive form to our body, and proactively embracing movements that kind of push back against that repetitive motion is a kind thing to do to yourself. Befriending your body means listening when your body tells you it's hungry and asking it what it's hungry for instead of immediately shoving whatever healthy thing you think is appropriate to eat down your throat. Befriending your body means listening to your sexual desires or lack thereof and accepting them as normal and being kind to yourself and your body around this. Befriending your body means loving your health based on something more than the number of this on the scale. It means not associating, I can't be healthy unless I weigh this much money. First, I weigh this much money. What is in my subconscious that made me say that? The feeling of, I can't be healthy unless I weigh this amount, right? Unless I hit my goal number on the scale. You may never hit that, and there may be a reason that your body has. It may just be about your form, your muscular skeletal structure, where some people are never going to weigh below a certain amount because that's not what their frame is meant for. And some people are never going to weigh above a certain amount for the same reason. It means rather than going for a rule of thumb about what number is a good number, instead looking to other metrics, looking to metrics of how you feel every day, looking to metrics of your own energy and your own symptoms and whether you have health conditions that you feel are aggravated or helped by the activities you are doing each day, and asking yourself how you can make changes to make yourself feel better, as well as, make your health metrics better. For example, like if you have high cholesterol, asking yourself, what can I do to work on that? That will feel good to me. Befriending your body does mean moving your body and embracing the movement that your body kind of naturally wants to stay healthy, because if you are always sedentary, your body will start to get stiff. It doesn't mean forcing your body into movement. It means listening. It means taking baby steps if you have a complicated relationship with exercise, as so many of us do. It means asking yourself if there are ways to move joyfully rather than looking at it as a chore you have to check off your list. It means when you don't feel fine, you let yourself not feel fine. And you ask your body what it needs, and then you do that thing. And if what it needs is to stay in bed all day, then you do that thing. And if what it needs is to eat more than you would usually eat at a meal, then you do that thing. And if what it means is to not eat for a day or two because you've lost your appetite, like it's okay to do that too. Like it might be that your body's just too busy fighting off an illness, for example, and is like, yeah, I don't need to be digesting on top of this. And at those times you can choose to only feed yourself things that are like, rich in nutrients so that your body has the fuel it needs, but can continue to do what it needs to do because it's telling you, don't eat, I'm not hungry. Befriending your body means honoring your desires as normal and natural for you, and finding out how you can be kind to those desires and how you can show up for them regardless of whether they do or do not match the scripts that we have been fed around how to live our lives. Befriending your body means making choices based on how your body feels about something, based on what feels great to you and what physically works for you, not based on what you have heard is supposed to be healthy for you. It's about listening. It is a listening relationship. It never goes away. You never reach a point at which you're like, yep, I know my body needs this. You may learn some new rules of thumb that generally work for you when you're busy. You don't have to be constantly in a decision-making headspace, but you always want to have the lines of communication open. The moment you stop paying attention to your body, you begin to deteriorate that relationship because your body, like you, is ever changing. Your body's needs are going to change over time. Your body's needs are going to change in acute ways. You'll be fighting off an illness, or you'll need extra energy because you're doing something you really love, like training for a marathon or something like that. Your body's needs are going to be different at those times. And your body's needs are going to be different as you age. And your body's needs are going to be different over time because of habits in your life that affect it. And that's all okay. And environmental habits. Environmental circumstances, I should say. A lot of people who were raised in cities, there's a higher incidence of asthma. I actually just got diagnosed with asthma. I am learning every day about the new needs that my body has as someone with asthma because I didn't have it when I was a kid. And all I can do is listen. I'm listening. I'm like, tell me what to do. I'm not expecting myself to get it right every time. I'm just committing to listen. I want to talk about how to listen to your body. For starters, we have to shut up. We have to stop telling our body what it needs. We have to stop guessing. I've been reading, I know this makes me a parody of myself as someone who's like overproductive. I've been reading as an audiobook in my car while I drive to my gigs, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. You know what? It's a great book, so go ahead and laugh. And a very important thing, I forget which habit it is, maybe it's habit 4 or 5, is about listening rather than diagnosing. And this is about relationships. The author talks about how what people truly want is to have their tender feelings acknowledged and to be heard. And they don't necessarily want you to solve their problems for you, and that it's especially insulting to jump into a conversation one sentence in and be like, I know what you need, when they haven't even told you the whole situation. And what you need to do is shut up and listen, right? What you need to do is reflect how they feel and really try to hear them and try to feel what it must like to feel that. He really describes listening not just as a set of like active listening techniques, but as an empathic thing where you are actively putting aside your ideas, putting aside your need to help, your need to be right, your need to fix the situation for someone you care about. And instead just listen and show them that you care about what you're going through and that it's important to you to understand what they're going through. And that is the way we need to listen to our bodies. We need to shut up. We need to stop jumping into diagnosis. We need to be like, oh, wow, something feels funny in my body. I must need to eat. I must need to stop eating so much. I must need to exercise. I must need to, right? We need to shut up and listen deeply. And I recommend, for me, what's worked is doing this as kind of a meditative practice throughout the day. Taking a moment. It's a great, like, set timers on your phone, make this every few hours, maybe not at the same time every day, because at the same time every day, you may catch some things and miss others, right? Your body has different needs when you first wake up in the morning than at 2 in the afternoon. And just pay attention. Notice sensations in your feet, in your legs, in your pelvic area, in your belly, in your back, in your chest, in your shoulders, in your arms, in your neck, and your head. And your goal here is not to diagnose. Your goal is to really just feel. Your goal is to maybe give names that are not diagnostic to the feelings, like, oh, wow, there's like a weird tingly thing happening in is that like where my spleen is? I don't know, over there. To simply acknowledge it, to bring it to your attention, like, hey, I'm having this feeling. And we don't have to label it as positive or negative, right? There are some feelings that will be immediately negative, right? There are feelings like, oh, like I have a tightness in my chest and that makes me scared about being able to breathe. That's going to be probably a negative feeling for most people. There are some feelings that are like, wow, I have a pain right there. Even so, I'm going to invite you to simply lean in and try to describe it. Try to describe what's happening. And just building that habit is the first step to repairing a relationship with your body. Just show up. Just show up and listen. Then, only after you've developed this habit of showing up throughout the day and checking in, then we can begin to do some thinking about the information your body has been sharing with you. And I want you to think about it as this. Imagine, I use this metaphor a lot about kings and queens and messengers, and how a king and queen is still the one making the decision, but they respect the messenger as having something important to share. Your body is the expert. Your body is the expert on itself. So I want you to do some thinking from this perspective. Here is what my expert is telling me. My expert body is sharing this information with me. What can I do? And how can I interpret this information? How can I translate it, because my body has a different language than I have, into something that I can better understand as a message about my health? Some of it may be really physical, like I ate too much and I'm a little overfull, or I did not eat enough and I am hungry, or my toes hurt because I've been on my feet all day, right? These are just physical, like, situations that we can take steps to correct in some cases, right? If you have to be on your feet all day and your toes hurt every day, well, you might not be able to change that. You might be able to. It's worth exploring it. Or you might be like, okay, well, that's my job right now, but maybe I can do some stretching exercises that help me not be in pain at the end of the day, right? Maybe I can move a little differently, distribute my weight in different ways throughout the day so that I'm not in one position. You can begin to get creative. Some of the information may be more complex because our emotions are tied up in our body signals, right? Here are some things my body has told me about both my body and my emotions. My neck is telling me it can't relax because I can't relax. I always wake up hoarse when I don't get enough sleep. My sore back is telling me that I can't keep up this grueling pace of too much work and too much driving. And I want to tell you, sometimes your body will tell you an adamant message that your brain is not ready to hear. And maybe your circumstances are not ready to hear, right? Like right now, I need to work a lot and driving a lot is a piece of my work. But me telling my body, shut up, don't have a sore back, is not going to fix the problem. So I need to show up. I need to show up for the difficult situation. In the same way, in any relationship where someone's needs are not getting met, you're like, all right, well, this is going to be a real tricky one, but we both got to do our best. I need to show up. I need to ask myself if there are ways that I can mitigate the overwork and its effects on both my body and my psyche. I need to ask myself, even if I can't solve this problem tomorrow, if there are steps I can take to make it that this isn't the rest of my life because my body's telling me it's not sustainable, right? If there are small shifts I can make that can change my trajectory down the road. Especially in the case of my neck is telling me it can't relax because I can't relax. Well, I need to ask myself what I can do about that. And that's going to be an array of possible activities, right? Like this is when we can begin to get creative and begin to ask ourselves, let's do some trial and error. Let's see what helps, right? I could take a mindfulness approach and I could begin a meditation practice and that might help me to relax. I could look at what's going on in my life and identify stressors and ask myself, is there anything I can do right now to knock out one or two of those stressors? To I don't know, delegate a responsibility that's weighing heavy on my shoulders, or to realize okay, if it's always, stress around this one particular commitment I have each week, do I have to do that commitment every week? Is there a way for me to say, you know what, this doesn't work for me anymore and take it off my plate, right? There's a number of different ways we can begin to address these things. And now is the time to get creative when we're really getting those deep messages from our body. And I want to tell you, this is an ebb and flow. It's not ongoing. It's not like, oh yeah, here I am in tune with my body. We're locked in. Just like for anyone who's married or has been in a long-term romantic relationship or even a long-term deep friendship, you are not, there are times when you're so locked in and there are times when you seem to be ships passing in the night and you seem to be disconnected. And that's just the relationship. It doesn't always mean there's something wrong or right with the relationship. There's just an ebb and flow. People grow and change and evolve, and sometimes they do so parallel to each other, and it feels very connected, and sometimes they do so in a different way from each other, and they have to work to reconnect, right? And if you care enough about the person and it's not a toxic relationship, you will do the work to reconnect. You'll be like, hey, we're growing apart. Like, let's start, I don't know, having dinner together every Saturday or something. Like, let's start, like, maybe you could tell me about this hobby that I can't relate to because I care about it just because I care about you. Let's start actively building that connection. And that's what we have to do with our body, is actively build that connection. There will be times when it's easy and there will be times when it's really not. And the skills, the habit of showing up to actively build it. It's like making deposits in the love bank in a relationship. It's worth doing. Sometimes our body is going to be screaming at us. And those times it can be hard to interpret the message. Just like when a loved one is screaming at us, sometimes all we hear is, wow, they're really upset. They're really upset. Oh God, they're really upset, right? And we need to change the tone of the situation because it's overwhelming for apparently our body and for us, right? And that's when we want to approach it in the same way we would approach someone who's very upset that we care about, where we want to we want to de-escalate. We want to talk to our body in a kind way. We want to remind it, hey, I really care and I'm really listening and I want to help. We're on a team. We're on a team. I'm not working against you. I want to fix this. And maybe you do try things out, trial and error, because you're like, oh, I don't know, to see if they help or make it worse. But all along the way, I know it may feel silly to have this like ongoing dialogue with your body, but for me, it's felt essential. All along the way, to be reminding your body, like, I care, I'm showing up for this. Even if I'm not doing it right, I want you to know I'm showing up for this because I'm committed to getting it right. We're going to fix this together. We're going to get better, right? And this can look like, you know, like your body can be screaming at you when you have sudden chronic back pain, which I did 2 summers ago, and I like had to go to PT. And honestly, what solved it was some of the PT exercises did help, but listening deeply to my body helped a great deal about not just what exercises and movements are going to get me back, but what caused this and what can I do to avoid it again, right? And it can be hard when it gets that bad because that means it has gotten bad. What was once a situation with an easy fix now isn't. In the same way that if you ignore a problem in your relationship, if you're just like, I don't want to deal with that, let's just pretend things are copacetic, eventually it's going to come back to bite you, and it's going to be bigger because both parties are going to have some resentment and stress around it at that point. I'm going to take a sip of coffee before I move on to my next point. I really hope, as always, y'all, this podcast has really become about me talking through issues that have helped my personal growth. And often there are issues I'm still struggling with personally because I'm not interested in being a guru. I'm interested in being someone who is a peer and who is a human going through the same challenges that you go through as a human and comparing notes and showing up for each other. So I hope the topic of this episode is working for you. I guess if you're still listening, it is. All right, I want to address something that comes up. I'm a big fan of intuitive eating. I recently discovered it through a podcast called Body Kindness, which I super recommend. I'll put a link in the show notes. It really helped me as someone who really wanted to be good to my body and to look out for my health in terms of how I eat and in terms of how I move. And honestly did not find very many kind of methods of going about that weren't fraught with really negative messages that I did not care to partake in. You know, like that weren't fraught with, associating your health with a number on a scale and counting calories and and creating categories of good foods and bad foods. And those things for me make me very anxious. My body reacts very negatively. My chest gets tight. I get nervous. I feel like all of the physical symptoms of anxiety very strongly when I'm engaged in that kind of, I guess, like nutritional watchdog stuff. Other people may not feel this way. It may be personal to me, but it's been really important to me to find a way to show up for my body nutritionally and with movement in a way that feels good, in a way that didn't feel like I had to also sign on to this culture that kind of bashed my body. and didn't let me love my body as it is. And intuitive eating, which is still something I'm exploring and learning more about. I'm reading a book. There's a book called Intuitive Eating that is written by two nutritionists who really pioneered intuitive eating as a process. It's not the same as just like, well, do whatever you want all the time. Intuitive eating really is about developing a relationship and listening to your body, and approaching your body with kindness, and tends to lead to better outcomes in their experience. And they did a lot of like research about this. This is a book of two nutritionists and their actual data with their actual clients and years of experience, not like, someone saying like, just love yourself. It's scientific. Anyway, it is a system or a school of thought that has really felt like coming home for me. It's felt like, yes, this is the thing that's going to allow me to be healthy. And one of the common objections that people say when they hear about intuitive eating is, well, I can't just do whatever my body wants because my body just wants me to sleep all day and eat nothing but junk food and never exercise and stay on the couch. And I hear variations of this all the time from people. I've been very slowly beginning to bring up intuitive eating in conversations because I have to tell you, I'm not someone who talks about, I know I've talked a lot about it today. Maybe it's because it's a long time coming. I am not someone who talks about my health and my body practices in conversation because I have a lot of kind of low level trauma around that, around receiving a lot of judgment for what I'm supposed to be doing to have a body in a good way, that kind of thing. And I think a lot of us have trauma around that. I tend to just avoid the subject because I don't want to have an uncomfortable conversation. I don't want to have a conversation that's going to make me feel judged by someone I care about. It's difficult. So the few times I have brought it up in conversation, that's a response I get that's common is, well, my body just wants me to eat junk food and lie on the couch all day. And I am not going to tell people they're wrong if that's what they think their body is telling them, but I'm going to ask some questions about that as someone who has done a great deal, who has invested a lot of energy in learning how to listen to my body. For starters, we have a culture that is obsessed with thinness and productivity. So it's interesting that what people think their body wants is to eat nothing but junk and to sleep all day. And it makes me think that maybe many of our bodies do want this because it's an unmet need, right? Because we are not meeting our needs for rest, and we are not meeting our needs to experience food as something nourishing and uncomplicated, as like my cat does, for example. Like it's just, there's no like, it's a problem if I eat this food. My cat's just like, here's what I like, here's what I don't like. I'm very happy to eat what I like. I'm not happy to eat what I don't like. Like she has this natural understanding of what is and isn't good for her. And it's largely correct, except when she tries to eat a string toy and ends up in a veterinary hospital, but that's beside the point. So I want to ask you, is it possible that the reason you feel your body wants you to sleep all day and eat nothing but junk food, is it because you are lacking in rest? Is it because you have been so restrictive and regimented around your eating habits that you have anxiety around certain types of food? And now some food has become forbidden fruit to you and holds like this extra fascination. I also want to ask you, how can you be sure what your body wants if you're not doing a regular deep listening practice? I want to ask you, are you sure those desires are coming from your body and not from your brain? I want to ask you if you're sure they're permanent. Is it possible your body really is burned out on being restricted around its basic needs? And that once you show your body and yourself that you're willing to listen and you're willing to honor its boundaries, that it may evolve to want something very different. I don't find that my body wants one thing all the time. I find that there are times my body wants to just lie down and rest. And I think, oh God, I want to just lie down and rest forever. And what actually happens is I lie down and rest for a while and then I feel better. Like I get extra sleep for a couple nights and I'm like, well, now my body wants something else. Like now my body wants to begin moving around. Now my body wants to take a walk, And similarly with food. I definitely feel like as I began my intuitive eating journey, and what I've learned is that this is very common. At first, I really was like, well, my body wants me to eat this, that, or the other thing. My body is sick of measuring. And that language is really interesting, right? Like, my body is sick of measuring. It just wants to eat what it wants to eat. And what I've learned is that many people who go on an intuitive eating journey have that period of, I don't have boundaries about what I eat because my body just feels like it wants to eat all the food, and that changes as we learn to listen more deeply to our body, because we have been imposing so many boundaries on our bodies that we have not gotten the opportunity to learn when our body presents a cue to us that tells us this is enough. So what we're actually acting out is not necessarily what our body desires. It's our best understanding of what it desires that turns out to be more about, like, this small child inside of us going, like, I have been denied all my life, and I'm gonna go to town now if I'm allowed to, and at some point that small child is like, all right, I'm good, and then we begin to have the real relationship with our body. Then we begin to be like, all right, what do you really need? And it becomes trial and error, and it's ever evolving. It's not the same thing every day. I find that my body wants very different foods day to day. I actually find it's a challenge because I work a lot and I have to pre-prepare food for myself. And sometimes I have done that and I get home and I'm like, well, past Rorie made this particular soup or whatever, but you know what I'm really craving is this thing. And I even have an idea of why I'm craving it. Like, it's because I need some iron, or it's because whatever, right? And if I'm able to, I go make the thing that I actually want to eat, and save the other thing for another day. And it's difficult, and it's difficult, like, like fitting that into our day to day, but we don't have to be perfect. We just have to try. Some more questions is, are you willing to try? Are you willing to try just listening every day? Are you willing to maybe even consider writing down what you hear from your body for a month, non-judgmentally, right? Going back to that practice of just identifying the feelings, identifying the sensations, identifying what messages we get, not trying to diagnose, just identifying them, and then wait like weeks later, and then looking back and asking yourself, do these desires actually change moment to moment and day to day? Like, are they actually as stagnant as I believed them to be? And are there things that are recurring? And could these things that are recurring represent an unmet need? Right? When we're chronically angry, it's often because we have an unmet need. Maybe someone's walking on our boundaries. Maybe we're in a toxic relationship. Maybe we just live in a patriarchal, capitalist, white supremacist culture that gets us down. All we can do about that is our best. But is it possible that the things that come up repeatedly don't represent you being lazy or your body being, like this lazy lump that doesn't know what's good for it, but actually represents an unmet need? Are you willing to try listening? Are you willing to try a different way? Try it for a month. It won't kill you. All right. There's my sales pitch on listening to our body. Now I'm going to bring it to a little bit of a witchy place. How can we connect with our body in magical ways? Well, I love this. I think our body, because it's an intuitive animal, responds beautifully to magical thinking. This has been shown in studies, and I'm not someone who like goes over the edge and says, we create every element of our health and we can think our way to a better body. Like, you know what? I have low iron right now, right? I need to take iron supplements in order to build the iron back up in my body because I have low iron. I'm also a vegetarian. Like, that's probably a little bit related. I don't think I can think my way to having enough iron in my blood. I need to actually take the friggin' supplements. You know what I mean? However, I do find that thinking my way to feeling better about something is possible, and that, like, me and my body can have a give and take now that I've been listening to it. So here are some magical ideas. We can call the elements into our body. We can ask Earth to take our stress, our tension out of our body, and we can instead call it stabilizing energy into our body. Visualization, I find, is really helpful for me and my body because it leans into the same skill set that I use when I'm trying to tune into the sensations of my body, and it's making it a two-way call. Right? Like, my body is telling me, here's how I feel. I feel really tense. And I'm like, here's a two-way call. I'm going to call in some stability and allow that tension to drain away. Right? It makes it a conversation. We can embrace the energy of fire. And I want to tell you, I've had a difficult relationship with fire, and I know it's because I've been feeling depleted from overwork. And this is not something that's new. This is like months, maybe years. I've had a hard time connecting to fire. And I know it is because fire is associated with desire, associated with energy. And frankly, when I'm overworked and stressed out, I feel low on both. And just noticing that difficult relationship has helped me identify some of the things I need to do to be kinder to myself. We can call healing waters into our body, right? We can use water as a healer to create better flow. We can align our idea of water with the blood running through our body, and we can ask it to run through our body in a way that is healthier for us. We can relate air to our breath, and we can allow our breath to be a healer and a clarifier. When we have no idea what to do, we just know we're not feeling well, asking spirit or our inner selves or a higher power to help, just asking for help, asking for grace because we don't know what else to do, can really be helpful. What if we visualized a helpful energy coursing through us? And what if this helpful energy either began to heal whatever problems it found or put a highlighter on them, right? Like similar to us pointing to the problem on like a chalkboard, right? What if this helpful energy served as like one of those ridiculous robots that they have now at the grocery store? Have you seen these? Like they're these little cleaner bots, but they don't clean the floor. They just traverse around the floor. They have googly eyes on them. They're pretty cute. And they stop if there's like a spill or a mess or something on the floor, and they like just make noise until someone comes along from, like the store staff and like cleans up the spilled spaghetti or whatever. What if this energy is like one of those robots that's just like, hey, here's the problem. What if we visualize energy doing that for us? That we visualize we have healing energy that will begin to make our problems more understandable to us. And the more that we engage in this practice, maybe through breath work, maybe as we drift off to sleep, the more it will become clearer and clearer to us what's going on with our bodies and what we can do to help. We can use spells, we can use prayer, or we can use personal ritual to call healing into our lives actively. We can say, please help me, drawing on whatever power we believe in, whether it's internal or external. This is best paired with an earnest listening practice, but the power of ritual is not to be denied. I think our body responds very well to subconscious programming. I know it does because in a negative way, I have seen it play out, right? And so we can harness that in a positive way. We can use the power of ritual to program our subconscious to say, I am going to get healthier. And whether that manifests in us, suddenly having different urges that make us that just help us, like craving the foods that are going to help us deal with the deficiency or whatever, or even like experiencing more fully the pain that makes us go to the doctor and check something else. That's a way that spell could work, right? Like a spell could actually turn up your pain in a particular area. So you're like, oh wow, I got to get my back checked out. And then you get it checked out and then you can begin to heal it, right? It can also work in a way that it just makes us better listeners. It begins to bring our focus to what we really need to understand in order to heal ourselves. So I believe that spells and ritual are best paired with that kind of earnest listening, as well as a willingness to devote some time each day to taking practical actions. Whether our listening flat out tells us, here's what you got to do, which has happened to me in the past. Those are beautiful moments when you just get the message, like whether you label as like claircognizance or like you feel it being said to you and you're like, what you need to do is this. That's beautiful. It's not always going to be that way. Sometimes it's like, okay, I know this is wrong and I don't know, I'll try one of these few ideas and see what helps this week. Like that's also good. That's just as valid a path. We can choose crystals, we can choose herbs, we can choose other items whose energetic properties kind of match our goals for our body. Bloodstone is really a good choice for anything internal. I find it to be something about it just makes me kind of want to tune in internally. And I'm always okay for like, maybe it's just psychological for me. But something about bloodstone makes me go like, yeah, I need to get to the heart of the matter, and allows me to get there emotionally. And as always, these things should be paired with an earnest practical effort, because if we're like carrying around a crystal for better health, but not taking any actual action around it, not changing our habits in any way, then we're saying to the universe, I'm paying lip service to this idea, but I don't actually care enough to show up for it. And, we get what we put in. We can become loving kitchen witches to ourselves. We can ask ourselves every day, what can I do to support my body with its nourishment right now? Small way, baby steps, right? That's what's beautiful about food and about eating and about kitchen witchery, is that we eat a few times a day, most of us. My husband eats one time a day. It works for him. It's what his body likes. So that's great. That's wonderful. I eat several times a day. And those are several opportunities throughout the day to ask myself, what can I do for myself? And sometimes that's supporting a physical need. Sometimes it's supporting an emotional need. You know what I mean? I've talked in the past about how sometimes I put rose water in my coffee because rose water is a heart healer, and I feel like my heart needs healing. At other times, I choose foods that feel more grounding to me because I'm experiencing anxiety. So we can choose foods that literally and energetically support our bodies. Energetically, in terms of like what I just described, like things that feel like, yes, this energy is useful to me. Literally, in terms of like, okay, well, if I'm feeling sluggish on a particular day, I might choose a food that I know from experience is going to make me feel more energized rather than something that's going to weigh me down. So I'm not talking about good foods and bad foods, and I'm not talking about monitoring our calorie intake like a hawk. Instead, I'm talking about identifying things that are helpful and actively choosing to add them into our diet. We can speak to our body as we drift off to sleep. I often send some reminders to my body as I drift off to sleep, and I have to tell you, they've really physically helped. I have a tendency, I learned this, to clench my jaw as I'm sleeping. If I'm having a nightmare or something, especially if I'm having anxiety dreams, I tend to clench my jaw. And I find that I can significantly reduce this if I simply, like, as I drift off to sleep, say, hey, we're going to keep our jaw relaxed tonight. And I relax my jaw as I think it, and I remind my body that that's what we're going to do. It's a loving reminder. And you know what? It really helps. It has really made a difference. And I know when I've woken up clenching or not clenching, because I used to get TMJ, and I have to tell you, I really don't anymore. And that's great. That's lovely, and for, that's not right for everyone, and maybe won't be right for me my entire life. There have also been times when I have been able to cure hiccups by meditating and breathing. And that's kind of a cue for me to know that I'm in a certain state of in-tuneness with myself, you know what I mean? Or not. It's something that an old boss taught me. It was really funny. I used to work at a deli when I was like 17. And I had hiccups one day. And my boss was like, can I try something? And I want you to know I'm not being creepy right now, and I'm going to stay far away from you. But I'd like to turn the lights off, and I'd like to lead you through a breathing exercise. And he was true to his word. He was not creepy. He was all the way across the room. Like, he did everything he could, knowing he was an older man, like to not make me uncomfortable with that situation, and got my consent first actively. What a great guy. And like led me through like, some really simple breath work, basically. Right. And sure enough, my hiccups went away. And in part, this was because he and I had a trust. Like, I trusted him. He was not a toxic boss. He was someone I had developed a positive relationship with. And that was a technique that, on and off, I have been able to access throughout the year. And I look at it not as like, oh, I'm doing bad, I can't do the hiccups thing. But it's like it's a message for me. When I'm able to breathe quietly and kind of ask my body to work out its hiccups, because hiccups are just like your diaphragm convulsing. Your diaphragm's just like, oh God, I can't deal with the world. That's the hiccups. And when I'm able to physically calm myself down through breath work and get rid of hiccups that way, I know I'm in a better kind of emotional and spiritual space. And invariably, the times that I'm not able to do that are times I'm already overly stressed, I'm perhaps overworking, I'm having increased anxiety symptoms, like there's other stuff on my plate that makes it harder for me to access. And you know what? At those times, it's okay. Like, you can use other things. Like I use the water trick where I hold my nose and I hold my ears and I drink water for a long time, and that gets rid of my hiccups. And it doesn't feel as gentle or as nice, but it works for me. And so relatedly, like let's have a loving line with ourselves of it's wonderful when we can ask our body to fix something small for us like that. And it's also fine to get help. Like it's also fine to be like, hey, if you can't make the neurotransmitters that are working for you from, in a homemade way, store-bought is fine. It's fine. Get help. Get the external help that's going to support you and your body. Do it. Just get the help. Don't feel bad about it. Feel great about it. Feel great about, yeah, there's a solution to this and I can do it. And go take the step and feel wonderful about it. I've been asking my body a lot of questions as I drift off to sleep in the last year because it has helped in the past. In the past, when I had my chronic back pain a few years ago, I think I mentioned, one thing that helped me a great deal is I literally received a helpful back exercise in a dream. It was a wacky dream, but I was doing this particular movement of my hips and my lower back. It was, it's kind of like a twerking movement actually, so it's a little bit embarrassing, but I was doing this movement in the dream and I had this strong sense, as you sometimes get in dreams, like this is the movement you need. This is your problem. This is what you need to do every day to feel better. And you know what? I was like, why not give it a whirl? And I started doing this in my like kind of morning back exercises. I was already in physical therapy. I just added it. And you know what? It really helped. It helped dramatically. And so it's really interesting that we can have this back and forth with our body through sleep and through dreaming, right? That wasn't even a lucid dream, but I did wake up and remember it. And I was like, huh, maybe that's a message from the old body. So now when I'm having a health problem, I go to sleep and I'm like, hey, body, if you don't mind, like I want to help. Would you show me what's going on? Would you show me, like, I was diagnosed with asthma this summer. I'm like, can you tell me how to help you best? Because I'm listening and I want to help, And I think that that's a really important message to send to our body. I think that there are some practices, like I think in particular about like the law of attraction, how there are people who are like, what you have to do is train your subconscious. You're like, this is how it's going to be, that feel very like kind of didactic and definitive. And it's like, hey body, this is what we're going to do. I don't find that myself and my relationship with my body respond well to that. I find that my body and myself respond well to like lots of love, respond to like, we're on the same team. Let's do this together. Like we can do this together and I care and I want to listen. And then I find that my body and my inner child and whatever else like opens right up. It's like, yeah, you're on my team. Okay, let me tell you. I find that to be way better than that kind of like didactic approach. But different strokes for different folks. I also want to just share that these practices are not about fixing your body. I think a lot of people still have this relationship with their bodies about like, well, I'll just fix this and then things will be better. Definitely I see people like that about weight loss. I'll just fix this, and when I'm a better size, then all my problems go away, right? Like my other health problems, obviously weight loss will be the solution. And I see it in the other way too. I see like people making positive changes in their lives. I see this in fiction all the time and it drives me absolutely nuts. Where people like make a change in their life that makes them happier. And then they're like, wow, I stepped on a scale and I just lost 30 pounds. And I guess now that I'm healthier, I just also happen to be thinner. And it's just another inverse way of associating thinness with health, and it drives me nuts. And it's, listen up, fellow fiction writers. I don't think that's a healthy message to put in your writing. But what I'm saying is, our bodies are going to evolve. Our bodies are going to evolve with our emotions and apart from our emotions, and with our day-to-day habits and apart from our day-to-day habits, just like any relationship. Sometimes we'll feel into and sometimes we won't. And showing our body conditional love, being cruel to it unless it reaches a certain number on the scale, being impatient with it when it can't do what you'd like it to do, it's going to get you the same lackluster results as if you applied that in a person-to-person relationship. If you were crappy to a person every day, I'm sure you've had people like that in your life who are like crappy to you and make jokes at your expense if you can't do something right away, if you don't understand something right away, who like point out what they view as your flaws in an unkind way. That does not build trust. You're like, I don't want to be around this person, right? That's a toxic relationship. Let's not do it to ourselves. Let's not do it to our bodies, even if we've been trained to. Like, let's take the time to unlearn it And let's even acknowledge it. Let's be like, hey, body, like I've learned some real toxic habits and I want you to know that I'm working on getting better. Like, stick with me. I promise I'm doing the work. Because treating our body conditionally is a withdrawal from our emotional bank. It harms the relationship every time. It erodes trust, and then your body's not going to talk to you. How can you expect your body to work with you if you won't meet it with kindness right now as it is? It's up to you if you choose to befriend your body or if you choose to treat it like a malfunctioning meat prison that you dislike being stuck with. Choose your own adventure. But it's a relationship you'll be in your whole life, and I personally feel like it's worth the effort to make it a good relationship. Let's move into which you got this. I know this is kind of a long episode. My episodes are getting longer. Sorry. I know this is kind of a long episode, but we're coming to the home stretch here. Which you got this. This is the part of the podcast where I just give you one practical thing that you can do that I hope you can take away and put into action, like right now, maybe right when you stop listening to this podcast, or maybe even as you listen to it. And what that is I want to lead you through a body awareness meditation. So I'm going to be sharing some very practical things for you to keep in mind, as well as some suggestions. I want you to pay attention to your breath. I want you also to check in with a couple spots in your body. I want you to check in with the internal feelings in like your belly. I want you to check in with your neck and your shoulders, the back of your neck and your head. I don't want you to put any judgment on these places in your body. I just want you to check in and notice if there's anything that's uncomfortable. If you're sitting in a situation that you know in a few minutes you're going to get a crick in your neck, or you're going to feel like, you know, your muscles a little bit pulled or a little uncomfortable, go ahead and adjust yourself right now. Go ahead and make an adjustment until you really feel like, yeah, I'm as comfortable as I can be right now. And don't judge yourself about what position that ends you up in. Just be in the position that really feels good to you in the moment. Go ahead and make those small adjustments. Then let's come back to our breath. Part of being in a comfortable position is being able to feel like we can inhale and exhale fully. We have room for our lungs to expand. Pay some attention to your breath. Just notice your breath going in and out. Notice its journey through your nostrils, through your bronchial tubes, into your lungs. Notice how your body kind of inflates. And then trace it back out. Maybe breathe out through your mouth. Feel what that feels like. We can make our exhalations a little bit longer than our inhalations. This is beneficial to us in getting to a more relaxed state of mind, as well as a more relaxed physical state. Now let's begin to tune into our body, and I want to start by making an earnest statement. I want to start by saying, hey, body, I have not been perfect to you in the past, and I understand that it might seem like we've been at odds with each other, and I want you to know I'm working to change that, and we're in this together. So I'm asking you to tell me, and I promise not to cut you off, and I promise not to judge. I want you to tell me what's going on. And you might get some input here. You might get some immediate response, and write that down or make a mental note of it. You know, your body might have something immediate to say, and it might even be snarky if you've had a difficult relationship with your body in the past. You got to make room for that. Meet it with patience. Listen carefully. Don't try to fix it, just listen. Then let's do a full kind of scan of our body. Let's pay attention to our toes, to our feet, to our ankles, our calves. We're not doing anything other than kind of placing our awareness, feeling what it feels like to be our calves right now. Feeling what it feels like to be our knees, to be our thighs, our butt, our pelvis. Feeling what it feels as we move into our lower back. What does it feel like to be your lower back right now? What does it feel like to be your belly right now? What does it feel like inside? There's all kinds of stuff going on in there. There's organs, there's intestines. What does it feel like? We don't have to know exactly what's happening. We could just say, okay, I've got this pulsing feeling here, whatever. Just do our best. You're not being graded. All we're doing is tuning in. What does it feel like in your chest right now? Both inside your chest and outside, like externally. Your sternum, your breast if you have breasts. What do your shoulders feel like right now? What does your upper back feel like? What does your neck feel like? How about your arms, your hands, your fingertips? What do they feel like? I want to encourage you is if as you're moving through this, you get the urge to do certain little motions, you get the urge to stretch something or move something, go ahead and do it. You're not being graded on being stoic in this meditation. Go ahead. And if you feel like, oh, you know what, I'd feel great if I stretch this right now, stretch it. That's your body giving you instant feedback, and you can build some trust by saying, okay, yeah, I'll do that stretch, whatever. I'll curl my fingers in or stretch my fingers out if that makes me feel a little nice for some reason. Go for it. What does it feel like in your head? What does it feel like as you trace the back of your spine up into the back of your head and then all the way up to the crown of your head? What do those sensations feel like right now? How about your ears? The outside of your ears and your inner ears. As they connect to your throat, what does your throat feel like? What does it feel like inside your mouth? What does your jaw feel like? What do your cheekbones and sinuses feel like? How about your forehead and your nose? That took what, 2 minutes? Let's commit to doing this a couple times a day, especially if it's a new practice for you. And let's even, if we have the time, let's have a notebook or a notes app on our phone or something like that to either speak into or write into, just anything that jumps out. We don't have to make an exhaustive log of every single thing. But if anything surprised us, anything feels like it needs a little extra attention or just delights us, if we're like, oh, I had this feeling and it was kind of this nice tingly feeling that I didn't even know I could have, right? And behind my knee. Let's go ahead and write that down. Like, just jot it down. It can just be notes. It's not for anyone else. It doesn't have to be full sentences. Let's try this practice for a week. Let's just check in a few times a day. You can attach this to other habits to make it easier to remember. Like, okay, I always check in after I get home from work and I take off my shoes, or I always check in, as I'm cooking my dinner and waiting for the water to boil, or I always check in when I'm on my commute just after I've given my ticket to the conductor, whatever it might be. Or you can set like alarms a few times a day on your phone. You can do it that way too. Whatever works. Don't stress yourself about it. Let's try to make a check-in right at the beginning of the morning when you first wake up before you get out of bed and right before you go to bed. And we don't have to pressure ourselves to journal after those check-ins if that, kind of disturbs our flow. But let's go ahead and check in. Let's make it a practice that at the beginning and the end of the day, we show up for our body just for 2 minutes. And let's do this for a week, and let's then look back at our journal and ask ourselves, are there patterns? Is there a variety? I always am amazed at the variety of feelings that my body can feel. That is not like one thing, as I maybe believe it to be in my head. That my body has a variety of different behaviors and needs and ideas. And now that we've done this for a week, let's look back and ask ourselves, are there some things that need attention from me? Is there something I could do to help? And let's focus on baby steps. Let's acknowledge that we can't turn our lives around overnight and that might not even be beneficial. But hey, if we're consistently feeling pain in an area of our back, let's ask ourselves, is there a stretch I could try every morning? Or if I'm staying in one position throughout a lot of my day, can I get up and move around? Can I change the way I'm seated? Or change the way I'm standing? Can I shift my weight? Can I do something to just move around a little bit more? And let's just call it trial and error. Let's try that for a few days. Check in with your body and see if it helps or not. Let's just make it an ongoing back and forth, like any relationship. Thanks for listening. I want to talk to you about where you can find me, but first I want to thank you for spending your time with me today, and I want to thank you for showing up for this conversation, which is really a difficult topic for me, honestly, and I think a difficult topic for a lot of people, so thank you for making space in your heart for it. If you like this podcast, I would love it if you would rate and review it wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you could take a minute to share it with someone, if you think someone, might get something out of this, then absolutely share it. I'd be really grateful. Send them a link or something. If you would like to support this podcast financially and unlock exclusive benefits, you can do so at patreon.com/Sassafras Tarot. SASSAFRASTAROT. Patreon.com is spelled PATREON.com. You can do that for $1 a month or more and get access to things like extra bonus content, personalized tarot pulls, a witchy Discord community, and access to these episodes as I record them. If you have a question, idea, or suggestion, or you just want to tell me about any of the things these episodes bring up, I would really, really love to hear your thoughts. You can't overshare with me, and I am also a vault. I would not share it unless you told me, hey, it's okay to share this on the podcast or whatever. You can email me anytime at sassafrastarot@gmail.com. You can also follow me on social media at Sassafras Tarot on Facebook, Instagram, Twitch, YouTube, and Twitter. If you'd like to order a reading, I'm low-key on hiatus right now, but I haven't turned my Etsy shop off at the moment. You can do so at etsy.com/shop/Sassafras Tarot. As always, I'm going to take you out with a song. Also, as always, it's going to be a softer rendition of a song because I've been talking for an hour, and y'all, I know from listening to my body, the talking a lot in a row always gives me a little bit of a sore throat. I can sing for hours and hours and hours and feel better and better, but talking can be a little irritating to my throat. So, let's do a soft acoustic version of this song. I'm going to play you a song called Everywhere I Go. This is a song I wrote about then my boyfriend, now my husband, and I really wrote it about reflecting on, some argument or disagreement we had, and waking up the next day and feeling like, even though we had this disagreement, even though we're not on the same page right now, I want to work it out. I want to put in the time and figure out how we can both be happy, even though it's going to be difficult, because I think this relationship is worth it and I care. That kind of earnestness of willing to vulnerably show up and say, let's try and figure it out, even though we're having a difficult time. And I think that that is the same energy that we need with our bodies and with our healing. So I'm going to share this song from that perspective. If you like this music, please search for me wherever you listen to music. I'm on all the streaming sites. I'm also on social media, and I stream regularly on Twitch, twitch.tv/Rorie Kelly, RORIE KELLY is how you spell my name. If you pop that into your favorite streaming site or social media, you will find me. You can also visit RorieKelly.com if you would like to either buy some merch for your cute little body, or your cute big body. I don't mean to look at me with my internalized sizeism. Buy some merch for your amazing body at exactly the size that it is. I have a lot of sizes. That's really important to me on my website. You can keep up with my tour dates. You can find where to listen to my music, all that kind of stuff on there. So thank you so much for listening. I don't want to feel this way. I played the wrong chord, y'all. We'll start again. I'm leaving that in. Everyone makes mistakes. I don't want to feel this way. I did it again. The first three chords of this are A, B, C, and it's because I think it's funny. And I first played a C and second played a B flat. Well, here we go. I don't want to feel this way. There we go. I don't want to know what's happening. I want the future like a bright certain thing, and the night wind carry me away on wings. But did you know that everywhere I go, I see you now? Everywhere I go, go, go. Still I want it just a little. Can we work it out? Everywhere I go, I see you now. And it's getting so, so, so. Still I want it just a little. Can we work it out? You're trying to get away. Do you dream to make something happen? Do you want to make your life one big game? I don't want to feel this way. Do you really matter? Either way, I already know my own way. Everywhere I go, I see you now. Everywhere I go, go, go. Still I want it just a little. Can we work it out, out, out? Everywhere I go, I see you now. And it's getting so, so, so. Still I want it just a little. Can we work it out? You think about me at night. Do I even enter into it? You don't like my brand new jealousy. Let me tell you, babe, you're not the only one. I'm not trying to feel this way. You say it'll be alright, right, right, right. Yeah, I say it'll be alright, right, right, right. And the hardest time to be kind is when you're hurting this way. When you fight, it only gets worse. And the hardest time to listen is when you're yelling and we both know we did it anyway, and we both know, but we did it anyway, and we both know, but we did it anyway, anyway. Everywhere I go, I see you now. Everywhere I go, go, go. So I want it just a little. Can we work it out, baby? Everywhere I go, I see you now. And it's getting so, so, so. Still I want it just a little. Can we work it out? Still I want it just a little. Can we work it out, babe? Still I want it just a little. Can we work it out? Thank you so much for listening today. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, whatever you're doing and wherever you're headed today or tonight. I hope it's meaningful. I hope you find joy on your journey. Thanks for listening. We'll talk again soon.